I'm Steve Costelow, a Vietnam veteran. I finished up being a Lance Corporal. I got promoted in Vietnam. I was there for 12 months and 1 week. So I was in the Ordnance Corps, which is a corps that supplies just about everything to the armed forces out in the field. It was in 1966. I had a birthday ballot and my birthday came out, which meant I was going to do national service. Back then they wanted a few more people to support the Vietnamese and they wanted Australia to send some troops. I was 20 at the time. I was working already in Flinders Lane in the clothing industry. All of a sudden my number came out and I was conscripted into the army. 1966 was the ballot and I received paperwork probably 6 months later to say that you would be going into to do your 2 years national service, and the paperwork explained what I was having to do. At the time I didn't think a lot of it, and I don't think my parents did either. They knew that there was a war going on in Vietnam between the North and the South, and probably back then we all thought, well, he's doing 2 years national service, he may or may not go to Vietnam. It's just a matter of your number came out, and whether they actually needed you or sent you was another thing. I can remember reporting to Swan Street, Richmond. It was after they told me that I had to go to training. So I had 12 months training at Puckapunyal, 6 months there and 6 months in Bandiana, which was the Ordnance Training Depot. At that time I was told that I was given ordnance as a corps. So that was probably a little bit of relief that I didn't get infantry. It made Mum and Dad a little bit easier, and myself included, I guess. And the Ordnance Corps is a corps that generally has warehouses, and we supply the front line with something as small as a screw even, or a tank. So ammunitions, all that sort of, anything they need, we stored and we stocked and sent it to them. After the initial training at Puckapunyal, it was jungle training, and then the corps training at Bandiana, which is near Albury, Wodonga. Then I got posted to 2COD Broadmeadows after that training, and in thinking that maybe that's where I was going to stay for the rest of my time. And I was there 3 months, and then they told me that you're going to Vietnam.
So did you have a choice in it?
There's no choice, no. You did have a preference of perhaps which corps you wanted to go to, but there was no guarantees of getting it. And luck of the draw, I guess I finished up in Ordnance, which it was probably, as it turned out, in a safer area than where the war was going on. So we were down on the coast in Vung Tau. We were told to report to Sydney before we left, and we had a Qantas flight from Sydney to via Darwin, and then Qantas flight to Saigon, and then a Hercules from Saigon to Vung Tau. And that was the start of my 12 months over there. Virtually I became in charge of, we have all sorts of different stores supplying different things, and there's probably 4 or 5 different groups, and I was in charge of one of them, and got my promotion probably halfway through my service there. Well, I always remembered the rear of the Hercules going down, and all I could see was a couple of Asians standing there, and I'm thinking, are they good or are they bad or are they what are they? They didn't tell us much, but they happened to be working for the South Vietnamese, so we didn't get told much of that. It was just a shock to see, the door go down and Asians in the airport there. Just wasn't expecting it. I was expecting maybe, Australian Army or something like that. Then we were driven to AOD, Second Advanced Ordnance Depot in Vung Tau, where I served out my 12 months. We had huts that were built. No more tents. They were huts, and they were sandbagged around the edges. And we all had a cubicle or our own bed and wardrobe, mosquito nets over our beds and things like that. And the living quarters were quite good. We had a mess on the base, and we were given breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I think mostly American rations. were given to us, and the food was okay. It was good. We had our own a boozer, as we call it, where we could have a beer of a night time with our mates and what have you. A lot of the time I spent writing letters of a night time. Occasionally, once a month, the Japaret, the ship, would come into Vung Tau, and we would work all night and unload that, put the stores away, put them where they're supposed to be. That happened about once a month. Everybody was working to unload this ship, and it would come back every month with another load.
And did you have time off at all?
I was able to have 5 days off after about 8 months, and a lot of the guys went to Hong Kong or a couple of other places. I chose to come back home because I was engaged to my wife at the time, and 8 months away, and I was busy writing letters and to mum and dad and my fiancée, and so I chose to come back just for 5 days, which is not long, and so that helped break it up a little bit. And then I came back again after 5 days and finished another 4 months. Then I was home, so home and out. They put in orders for what they need in the field, and we would send them by truck or helicopter if needed urgently or something or other. Yeah, we'd pack it up, select it, and send it off, so that we had orders, different orders every day to go to the front line. So, it was full on all the time.
And you were working 7 days a week?
You would. We had half of Sunday off if you wanted to play a little bit of sport. Otherwise, you work 7 days a week. So I opted to. I was playing tennis when I was before the army, and I had quite a bright future in tennis as well, which all went out the door after being called up. I did play the top grade in the state for a year, and that at 20 years of age, that was a big decision in my life that I couldn't go on and try and play tennis a bit more. But yeah, that's what happens. Your life gets taken away from you, no fault of your own. Your marble comes out, and next minute you're over there in a war doing what you can for the country.
And what stood out for you the most?
Camaraderie, I guess. We're all there with no friends, no girlfriends, no mums and dads, and we're all doing the same thing. So you've got to make the most of it and get to know your fellow soldiers and spend a bit of time with them. That's all you had. So that was important, to get on with everybody. I had 5 guys working for me in the Group 5-6 warehouses, and I also had a Vietnamese civilian who would pick the small orders out of areas and pack them. So we did have a few civilian Vietnamese on the base. We had other corps around us. We had engineers. We had the hospital not far from us. You could see the helicopters come in every day with either injured or somebody dead. That was a constant reminder that there was a war going on. Most of that was further up north. So I was lucky to be down south, doing what I could down there. And that was just luck of the draw. Could have finished up anywhere.
Were you required to stand guard at all?
Yes, we had perimeters. Even though it was reasonably safe down there, we had picket duty every night. Different times, different blokes would have to do duty. So you'd stand at I think we called it TP1, I think back then, and it was just fenced off and a bit higher, and you just stood there for about 3 or 4 hours. That was your shift, and then you go to bed or something or other. And so we had a boundary that we looked after. Yes, yeah. Every night they'd have different guys doing their duty. So.
And standing guard there, were you on your own? Or
well, there's two of us. One night I was on, and I heard rustling in the bushes around, and the normal procedure is halt. Who goes there? And fortunately, it was one of our own people, which they shouldn't have been outside the boundary, but otherwise he could have been on the wrong end of being shot if he. So, but that was the only thing I came across in 12 months. So it was a difficult time because, as I said, I was I just started work in the clothing industry in Flinders Lane, and all of a sudden you get called up. I got engaged. My wife, my fiancée at the time, waited for me to come home. Didn't know whether I was coming home or not. But yeah, it was a hard time. You know, being away from family. I was still living at home with mum and dad. I can always remember mum, when she heard the news, she was crying on the end of my bed, and you know, I've never forgotten that. And yeah.
How did she feel while you were away?
A lot of letters. Nightimes were our own. So I'd write every night, either to my mum and dad or to my fiancée, and then go and have a drink in the club that we had there with our mates and what have you. And that was our normal night.
Did you make phone calls at all?
No phone calls. No.
And in terms of the sports side, what sort of sports were they playing?
There was tennis and there was AFL football, or VFL, Vietnam Football League we called it. And you can only have Sunday morning off if you did either one of those things. There was cricket that we played on our own oval. We had a sort of a sandy oval there that we could play cricket on, but I chose to play tennis in one season and football in the other, which was only Sunday mornings. We played against the other units in that area. We won a premiership.
That's important.
Yeah, we won a premiership. And it's still talked about with our mates today, so that I catch up with on ANZAC Day and Remembrance Day. So yeah, it was a big 2 years out of my life. You had an option to go into Vung Tau if you wanted to. I chose not to do that because you couldn't tell who was a supporter or an enemy, and because they all look the same. And I chose not to go into Vung Tau very often. A lot of the guys did for a break, hit the bars and what have you, but as I said earlier, I was probably prefer to write letters and do that sort of stuff and just keep myself safe and get home. That's all I was worried about, really. We had entertainers, yes. I think we had about three lots of entertainers at the club. We had an outdoor theatre with sandbags around it in a tent situation, and they put a movie on every night if we wanted to go and have a look. So that was night times were good. Yeah, kept us busy and just do what you want to do over night time. But during the day, flat chat. Coming back felt good, but we were warned not to wear our uniform when we came home because the people here were against the Vietnam War. They didn't want our young blokes going to war, and there were occasions where we got spat on if you wear a uniform back in those days. But it's all changed now. They realise, except for the ones that we've lost, I guess. It's pretty hard for the family, obviously. But and the other disappointing thing was it took 20 years for the government to welcome us home, which I went to in Canberra 20 years after I came home. It's ridiculous, but I went and caught up with a few of the guys up there and probably brought a bit of closure. I think most of us needed it. That's a long time ago now, 50 years now since the war finished this year. So.
And your mom, how did she feel about you coming home? What was her reaction when you finally arrived back?
She obviously loved the fact that I was coming home. She wouldn't have known, same as I didn't know what I was heading into, because I don't tell you much, So Mum and Dad were very happy that I came home. They didn't have me for long because I got married. I came home in June and got married in November to the lady that was my wife for 49 years and just passed away recently. It was good to get home.
And Stephen, can you tell us about your medals? It
was the Defence Medal, the Vietnam Medal, National Service Medal, and the Active Service Medal is another one. Yeah, the Vietnam Medal is the green one, the star. Yep, I'm very proud to wear them when I can. But yeah, they're the 5 medals that all the people who served in Vietnam got. It is good to wear them. Only wear them ANZAC Day and Remembrance Day, but yeah, it's nice to display them. And I know there's a lot of servicemen out there that have struggled with fitting back into normal life. I didn't have that problem. I had a fiancée waiting for me, and it was just, and I wasn't affected by, I don't think that by the war itself, probably because I wasn't right amongst the fighting. That would have helped. But as I said, that was just luck of the draw where I finished up. You know, it could have been anywhere. I think I fitted back into work and like normal. I think still seeing mates at RSLs and things like that, that helps because they know. We talk to them. They know what it was like. You can't talk to other people that weren't there and don't know what it was like, and yeah, so we don't bother. We just talk to our fellow vets, which is good. The last week of my tour, I thought I was going home right on the 12 months, but then my replacement didn't come, so they kept me for another week, and I didn't have a gun or anything. They already taken that off me, but yes, that extra week that sort of dragged on a bit. I thought I was going home, but yeah, eventually we got home and flew into Sydney, and it felt like home, but it wasn't home because I live in Melbourne. I lived in Melbourne, but then we got a plane back to Melbourne, and people waiting for me at the airport, which was great. We used to tick off the dates on calendars, just cross them off as they went, but that was about all, because we all went home at different times. I talked about coming back to Australia after 8 months for 5 days. The only way we could do that was because the Americans had flights to go to Australia for their R&R, so we were able to fly with them and go to Australia and then come back. That was probably the only reason we were able to go home during the 12 months because of the Americans. Otherwise, you'd be going to Hong Kong or Singapore for your 5-day break. Yeah.
And did you deal much with Americans?
Not a lot. It was an Australian base, so unless you went into town, which I said I didn't do a lot, there'd be a few Americans in there, obviously, and all decked out in their all their medals and what have you. But they're pretty out there. But yeah, we had, as I said, we had their rations for food. So I don't know why that was, but we had our own kitchen and mess and what have you. But I've come home okay, and nothing seems to worry me. So I'm one of the lucky ones.
Looks good still.
It doesn't fit now. I think my head's grown along with the rest of me.
Was this just for ceremonial?
Parades, yes, mainly, yeah. Training, we used to wear them, and we did have a beret as well, with the ordnance badge on it.
Between ranks in the Australian Army, was it quite relaxed?
Yeah, look, when you first go in for the training, you're generally taught by a corporal, and what he says would go. You just got it. You think he's king, and he really is only a corporal. And you learn later on that, gee, they're only corporals, and they're yelling at you, and you think they're kings, and you're telling you what to do and all this, and you soon find out that they're just training you. And we all go in as a private. The next rank is Lance Corporal, which is what I got promoted to, and then Corporal and Sergeant.
And your jungle training, because that was 28 days. How did you find that?
That was hard work. A lot of running, and also, shooting, and learning how to use equipment, and camp out, look after yourself. Yeah, all of that. It just like you'd have to, during a war, you'd have to, make do. Look, so they trained you hard, very hard.
They shall not grow old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.